if I'm joining new, the corporate dev role is you have to be a listener. Like first you have to understand the segment. Like you have to. If I'm joining new, for the first thing I'll do, like maybe it will differ if from any other person the way they will do. I'll have to be a listener the first few months, go across the organization, the different stakeholders, starting from uh, uh, starting from be it the board members and what they want in terms of the financial shareholders, uh, uh, the customers, the leaders across functions from sales, client services, operations, finance, and to understand the business. I'll have to say, what's the business? Where are we playing? Who are the competition? What are the key levers from the business in terms of the macro trends, like what's playing out, and what's the service we are offering right now and how it's differentiated in the marketplace.
Welcome to M&A Science, where leading M&A practitioners share lessons learned from their experience. If you're interested in keeping up with the latest from M&A Science, visit mascience.com and subscribe to our free newsletter. Every Monday, we share highlights from our interviews and invitations to events as we build the greatest community of forward-thinking M&A practitioners. Again, that's mascience.com. I'm your host, Kisan Patel, CEO and founder of M&A Science. Joining me today is Sri Viswanathan. He's the Chief Corporate Development Officer at HGS Healthcare. HGS Healthcare is a pure play healthcare business process management company. Today we're going to talk about building a great M&A strategy. Sri, can we kick things off with a little bit about your M&A background?
Yeah, sure. So hi to everyone, and thanks everyone for your time, and nice to be here. Look forward for a nice interactive session. So I have 25 plus years experience in Corp Dev, and I initially 5 years in joint ventures, and the rest in Corp Dev. It's more acquisitions, divestitures, for the partnerships. I've done around 15 plus transactions across US, Canada, India, Philippines, across. So, and kind of divestitures is a kind of a different ballgame altogether. Then I'm a angel investor. I've done in my personal time around six investments. Mostly I focus around digital tech and health tech. So there are one exit, one near around exit soon, and two going really well, one failure. So there's lots to learn from it. So overall, I'm a Corp Dev, M&A, JV partnerships, and an angel investor. So, and in my personal time, I'm a stock trader. So that's my background. So,
You're really well rounded. I like it.
so everything that has to do with investments and what you have to do with the money later, right? So.
Do you have any normal hobbies? We play golf, tennis, or anything?
So I follow where my kids it's a kind of follow the money approach. I follow where my kids take me. So it's that's my hobby about.
I do the same. Let's kick things off. What happens when you don't have a clear M&A strategy? Why is this so important?
Yeah, it's so important. Like that's everything wrong can happen. So if you don't have a clear M&A strategy, the danger here is this is a very pricey game to play, and because M&A draws out most important thing in an organization. If you're a much larger organization, the risks are much more. It can suck out the management time in areas where you don't want to, and that can derail the organization from the most important things that you want to do. And the next is it's a very pricey, and in terms of the diligence, any diligence process, bigger the targets are, it can draw out. It can be a very pricey diligence process. So in short, you would have ended up wasting a lot of time, sacrificing in the time what you want to do, and next all the time that if you're not making a deal, and if you're on M&A side, if you're not making a deal, it hits the P&L. If you're making the deal, you can capitalize, and you can that goes on the balance sheet side, right? So if it's a listed company, that makes a lot of difference. That can hit your EPS reporting, and very sensitive to the stock price, right? It really need to know what you're doing about where you're spending your time and money.
So you don't want to make expensive mistakes. What about benefits of having a good strategy in place?
Yeah, good. For strategy is that it's about an alignment. I'll say once the good part is that you really know what you have to do, where you have to plant your flag. There is alignment across the organization in the sense that uh, what's the strategy, what's your capabilities, what do you want to build on your own, and what you want to buy. And then a good part of the strategy is that the focus is on spending your efforts exactly on things that you want to buy, and so you can avoid boiling the ocean and exactly to go into a proactive search process, and you can articulate your script and articulate what's the value that you get on the table. So it becomes a very proactive approach. It's not that assures the success, but at least you're aligned, and any learnings involved, you can constantly calibrate to learn, improve, and adjust your strategy and your mechanisms and your offer on the table, and how do you approach the market, how do you run campaigns, and how do you convert, and how do you differentiate. You can constantly improve to convert finally, right? Which you can encash anyway. So
So getting your alignment, I like how the alignment example, your local team, but even the broader organization, you can get aligned and then focus your efforts on more specific targets as well, at least the right ones. Um, how do you think about shaping the strategy for a corporate function?
yeah, shaping from the strategy, I would like to start anything related to strategy from what you are capable of, right? And strategy is a very broad word, and anybody can, no two-person can define it the same way. Like I'll say, as in any organization standpoint, I view it as we have a limited team, and people have a daily job, and there is so many people can play something extra beyond their hours. So how do you spend your organization time, is the way I would like to say it. It starts from your capabilities, how much resource you have, what's the best you can do with your capability and the resources, and what choices you need to make. Is how I will define as a strategy. And in the sense, what you're capable of, what you can do, what's the market, through the capabilities, where the market can be big. You can use capability as a filter to see what opportunities that you can chew, and what opportunities fit you, what you got really good at, what you can stretch to do, and what's a great opportunity but that's not for you. It's to make those choices, and make those careful bets, and allocate your capital into what you are, and allocate your organization time into it. It's about making those defined choices based on what you can do.
Basically, how you are going to spend your time as an organization and then managing capabilities. And again, how you'd execute on against that.
Yeah, it's finally making choices. It's like I'm good at this, and I can say I want to be a kind of a crypto codist, but it depends on whether I'm capable about. So I'll say it's about the making choices based on the credible evidence of what we are really good at, and based on those capabilities, how am I looking into the market? What's my customers saying? What's the market saying? What's the outside in perspective? And the catch all in is always kind of strategies many times defined as an inside out exercise, and we can 10 people can lock ourselves in a room, and we can say to come up with grand plans and decks, and it's more an inside out perspective. Like, and finally it's to have the outside and perspective to put the mirror in front of out to say this is real, and this is what you're capable of, this is what you can do, like see it with versus your competition, how they are good at. So anything you're putting in your money where you are not capable of, like where the competition can take you for a ride. So that's how you need to be as a leader. You need to allocate the time and spend the resources in a way where your team has the ability to deliver something beyond your competition, right? It's about making those choices with these filters in mind. And one strategy doesn't fit, like even if you're operating in the same segment, if you're the same player, the underlying capability of the organization as a leader, you need to be aware of the DNA of the organization. You need to be aware of like what finally I can deliver, my team can deliver, what's a stretch for the team, what's beyond for the team. And otherwise, even if you're operating in the same space, and one strategy does not fit two players in the, even if you're in the same space.
I like how that element you mentioned of a reality check and almost an exercise of self-awareness as a part of this.
Yeah,
Who are
very
the people?
true. Yeah, well,
Yeah, go
very
ahead.
true. Like it's funny, like you have a lot of experiences. Like say, I have involved in the past with organizations like Tata's. They have adopted a kind of Malcolm Baldrige model as across the group, and you have come across that there are matured organizations. There are organizations which are uh, premature. It defines how do you look into a strategy exercise. The worst thing that can happen to an organization is that, like in a crude form, an organization can look the strategy exercise as a budgeting exercise, right? Like you say, oh yeah, this is what I've done last year, and this is what you are going to do, and it can become a number exercise, a financial exercise, like all sales, a client service organization, and operations can sit together and say, we are good at this, we are so good at this, and next year we will do, and it becomes an inward looking exercise. But ideally, it needs to be and outward looking, and limiting outward looking, not just your customer. That's one level better. It gives an outside in perspective, but it needs to be a broader market exercise, the macro trends, and like how it fits in, and how do you see an outside. So once you immediately look in as a benchmark with others, benchmark with the industries, then you know how tall you are, and how good you are, what you are good at. So it's very important that it needs to be broader into outside, and a good balance of bottom up and a top down. A bottom up in terms of knowing reality is important, and kind of top down in terms of making those clear choices. Finally, yes, there are 100 great opportunities to go after, right? Like say, and finally making those choices to say, this is this year, this is next year, this is far after, and this is how we are going to do. That brings in alignment. Otherwise, you're running 360-degree and trying to plant flags in different areas, right? Like it's, you kind of dilute the efforts of the team 360-degree, and that comes at the cost of results, what you can achieve short term, right? So
So let's start from the beginning. Who are the people involved in formulating the strategy?
it's typically, it starts, like I'll say, any organization, the sales organization, the salespeople will be involved, and the client service, the account managers who are managing the big accounts will be involved, and the operations team who are running the business day to day will be involved, and the finance folks will be involved, right? Like, and you start together, like what you have done last year and what you can do next year, and based on what you hear from a customer. These are the typical people involved. And once you step up into a bit of a matured organization, the next level of maturity, people start with to say the voice of customers, to listen to your customers and what they feel like, and calibrate that into how they feel about you, and what about what you have done and what you can do. That's a kind of next level of maturity. And an organization who is far more matured into it, to say beyond customers, to say a reflection of the market, like because you may be working with a sample space of customers who may reflect the segment, or who may be a lead player in the segment, and then you're fortunate. If your customer is a lag player in the market, then you need to be conscious about like taking samples of across the market, like what's the requirement of the segment as a whole, right? Like so you need to do in and the next level of maturity, you need to bring in the outside level. These can be consultants, or these can be voice of other customers, your relationships, who can, how the market is trending, the next wave down, and even if these can be startups in the field, right? Like if you're thinking about survival of your company, say down 5 years down, like it's, if you take in math, there is every 10 years, how many companies have survived. You'll be surprised by decade, like many companies vanish every 20 years, right? Like if you're also thinking about down 10 years, like your company to be valid, it's also important to involve those companies who are disrupting the segment. They may be very small now, but they can sweep you off the floor down 20 years. So you have to think about their perspectives about how the industry is changing. So that's the next level of maturity, I'll say.
Do you distinguish separately your company strategy and M&A strategy? What is that like? What does that thinking look like?
Now I ideally like to make it. If I need to make it right, I'll say M&A is a tool. I'll say like if I
Hmm.
yeah, instead like it has to start from what's the organization and what's the strategy of this, and M&A is a subset of the organization structure. It's a kind of a tool to execute an organization strategy is how I'll say. And in the strategy, like say this is what we want to do, target A, and then it comes into area. Yeah, out of this I can do one, two, three on my own. But this is something out of the wheelhouse, right? Like out of the wheelhouse, or this takes too long time to develop, or too long it's of a time a market will change and there is a benefit in buying. Like I think M&A fits in where a strategy, then what I can do on my own, then what's the gap, like, and then what can be a buy versus make on your own, whether it's in terms of the time it involves to make it, or whether you have the capabilities to make it. So, and once a buy is defined, then you make as relevant to that, then you make a strategy to go after the market to acquire, right? So,
So the M&A strategy is a subset of a broader company strategy.
yeah, definitely, it has to be. Otherwise, you're not aligned, and you're
Well, help me wrap my head around this. So say I'm in your shoes, corporate development leader, brand new. I'm just joining an organization and I need to help shape the M&A strategy. Walk me through that. And is it first, do I get up to speed on what's the current company strategy? And then what am I doing to build that M&A strategy?
yeah. So sorry, I was just kind of reading through the questions here. So if you're new, going a new company, or your question is like sorry, can you come back?
Yeah, so if I'm brand new in a corp dev role, I'm leading a corp dev, head of corp dev, just got this new role, growing company, past 5 billion market cap, something like that. And I want, what's the first thing that I should be doing? Think in terms of strategy. I'm assuming that I want to learn what the current company strategy is, and then help them shape something very specific for M&A. Can you maybe walk me through some of that thinking?
Yeah, interestingly. So if I'm joining new, like the corporate dev role is, you have to be a listener. Like first you have to understand the segment. Like you have to, if I'm joining new, for the first thing I'll do, like maybe it will differ if from any other person the way they will do. I'll have to be a listener the first few months, like go across the organization, the different stakeholders, starting from uh, uh, kind of starting from be it the board members and what they want in terms of the financial shareholders, the customers, the leaders across functions from sales, client services, operations, finance, and to understand the business. And I'll have to say, what's the business? Where are we playing? Who are the competition? What are the key levers from the business in terms of the macro trends, like what's playing out, like, and what's the service we are offering right now, and how it's differentiated in the marketplace, and how does the revenue model work, and how, why customer is paying, and why they are paying, and what they are paying in for, and what's the value positioning in the market, like how customer fees it, like, and how we price low, high, and how the customers are validating. So in short, I need to understand the business, right? Like, and to play a meaningful role in corporate dev in defining strategy, or then articulating the M&A strategy as a subset of it, then to go after the market. I need to understand the business in terms, like all the bullet points as an approach I explained is to say how I will try to understand the business. And I particularly feel that while the macro factors is underplayed a lot, I will stress a lot, like it's like it's like anything. Like you can understand all the 1,000 line item details in an Excel sheet. Like, but say the uh, the the macro factors play a big role. It's as much as an organization in a functional silos. They understand the micro factors very well. And when you have to connect the dots across and put things together and see a big picture, and you need to understand the macro factors in terms of the geopolitical, or the industrial level, and what's the path around the curve, and who's playing, and who are legacy competition, and who's emerging players, and what are the changing business models, and what's the buying pattern differences. So you like by the customers, and there is a bundling or a kind of splitting of the way they are consuming, and what's the convenience playing. So you need to understand the macro factors and define and understand the segment play. Then you can go back to say, now look at from a different perspective. I heard it from you inside out. Now go back and from outside and go back to the team and say, now this is from an outside in. You present with the details in the how you see the trends and factors, and with the evidence of it, and with the players and how they are performing, and benchmarking internal teams' performance with the external. Then people will say, it's always we need to be cautious, because people who are running the business day in day out, they are veterans in it. Like, people can be there running it for decades, and you heard from them after 2 months, you're going to go baback to them and say, oh, come on, I'll tell you what you need to do. What's the strategy? Like, people can throw you out, right? Like, say, so what can, like, it's called, like, hoping is that it can happen as I can go back after 2 months, say, this is what I heard from you, structure. I learned this from you, but now I'm bringing this is what outside. And here are the data, and here are the trends, and here are the evidences, and here is what we compare with this. Then once you talk with data, then it's very compelling for people to say, oh, now that's an outside in. And now you can say that that's a learning for people to say, oh, yeah, now I can learn from this. I can now can make choices from this. And they need to, and acceptance is something, a clear factor. And inside the buy side organization, having 20 years, it takes a long time to gain acceptance from the team to say that they can hear from you, right? Like, and being internal to an organization and being accepted as an advisor is a very tough thing, because it's not, I think, across any organization, you can say that that's why you hire a McKinsey, you hire a Booz Allen, because people can accept anyone outside as a consultant. But somebody who are you having a tea with on a daily basis to come and say, oh, you're not selling, you're not delivering, you're not part of anything, but you're going to tell me what's the strategy is going to be, how we need to do. You need to gain the acceptance, and that needs to come up with tangible evidence, and you putting up actionable opportunities on the table for the team to benefit. So it's to gain acceptance. Once you have the acceptance, then you get to play long, right? Like, and internally. So that's why on the buy side, if you're sell side engagement, on the buy side, you are involved, there is a lot of merit in playing long in a segment, playing long in one target, and you gain acceptance. Then you get to do a lot of awesome things.
Can we walk through an example of how you formulate an M&A strategy? Like, can we make up a little company and walk through how you'd actually build that out?
Yeah. So if I have to say, if I'm what kind of company? Say if I'm say, like, I'm in the business process segment, right? Like, say if I'm selling, example, a healthcare service, like, which I'm used to, like, my customer is my insurance payer, and say if I'm selling a product of service X, and then it's once a strategy is defined to say I'm going to offer enrollment service, helping insurance company to sell their services or policies to their members. Like, so this is the business. If your growth is defined to say you want to be a 100 million company and you want to be the best in the segment, and if you need to do, then from that you need to come up and say, as an M&A strategy, is that come back and say what you are good at. Like, say internally, example, after making the inside out comparison and outside in, if it turns out that yes, you have a good sales engine, if you say that if you have a good operating engine, and assume that if you don't have a technology backbone, and if you're, say, so many companies operate still in a legacy model. Say, assume if I'm one company operating in a legacy model, still kind of paper pen, or a kind of a limited tech. If it comes out as a gap, as a technology is the gap, then that and an M&A strategy comes up with this gap analysis to say, yes, one, there is a technology enablement as a gap. Then two is to say, oh, I'm not able to sell that well. I'm lacking the consultative front end to sell. Then I define A to these things. That becomes the criteria. Then I'll go. My M&A strategy becomes that, like, my goal becomes this gaps need to be met in any transaction. So then I define a criteria to say, this is the size of my company. These are the gaps, and in any acquisitions, it needs to check the box and tech, front end sales team, and this is my treasury. I have X million in my balance sheet. I can raise this much money, and I can lever, and I can give my shares this much. Like, what's my treasury and funding like to go for it? Then I'll create a campaign in a way that what's all my criteria, like what size of company fits the bill, what's the capabilities, these are the capabilities I look in for it, this much I can spend for it, this is the timeline. I define the campaign. Then I go out in the market and check if this is the criteria. This is my wish list. Like, are there targets that fits that wish list like this, right? Like, then I map the competition that fits the area, list out, and check out for like what's available, what's already available in the market. There are then through networks, then through intermediates, then through a proactive campaign, then the message to get some real opportunities first to test and validate what I'm looking for and whether it's available in the market. Then I'll have a large scale exercise to double click on each of those efforts.
You had a really good example of why strategy is important, where you can understand those characteristics of your business, the strengths and weaknesses. Now you're adding an extra layer into not only am I looking at targets to add that business line I want, but I'm going to look for these specific characteristics that can bring additional value in these areas, the tech stack and things like that to strengthen.
Yeah, and very importantly, like, the M&A strategy needs to come out. It needs to be born. It needs to come out of the overall strategy and the gaps in what we cannot do, right? Like, that's one. And second, if you have to make it really powerful, even out of these options, because there can be many gaps, right? Like, there are some gaps. If you fill it, the organization needle in terms of what you're delivering to the customer may not change, right? Like, and the powerful choice of M&A strategy is that where you can multiply the value, like, say, you can identify a target, like, if these are the gaps, I can go for a company like this. If I acquire this company, I can make it X as e to the power of X. Then there is a huge value I'm developing for all the stakeholders, be it for the acquiring organization or for the acquired organization. Then you're making it a big win-win there. And you that's how you can prioritize. While there are many things to buy, what I will buy first, right? Like, that's something which moves the value for the organization, whether you measure it as the value to the customer in terms of the service they see, then the way they can see you. That's a powerful parameter first to choose from. And then I'll say, oh, if customer, they like, by acquiring this new capability, that it changes the perception how they are going to look. And next is, by this change in positioning, are they going to pay something extra for me, right? Like, for the change in positioning. And then third is, then this is such an attractive segment. This is a big needle mover. Can I take this from 1 million to 50 million, or 1 million to 100 million? If that's an area, if I have, that's the biggest for me. Like, so I'll say in bottom line, there is which moves the needle for, in terms of from the customer side, in translating into your financials. That becomes the highest and first thing to go after. Like, so it needs to be born out of that. Like, that's how I'll prioritize. If I do this, then it becomes an easier thing. When you're going after it, your pecking order is in terms of the biggest in terms of value. Then any efforts that are spent, you're having a much larger numerator on a smaller denominator. What you're doing, that becomes the value multiplier effect is much more, and that benefits more even the acquired organization. That's very important, because so much, if I'm parking a small amount of the consideration for the future benefits to be achieved, and the acquired organization sees that as a kind of a good upside, which they cannot do it on their own, because that becomes a key attracting point to say. And in this world nowadays, it's a big difference, because there is a long lineup for new age talent and new age people, and there are 20, 30 bids, and that comes to say how you differentiate. So when you're picking orders in the time of starting from your area of strength and where you can make a difference, and you are coming in and you're looking into a target to say that I'm not buying you for what you are, but I'm buying you for what I can make out of you, right? Like, and be beyond what you cannot do it yourself. That becomes a huge selling point to differentiate, acquire, add value for everyone.
Really great point on having the priorities so you know exactly where you're focusing and then building that compelling story to be competitive in those situations or get the level of engagement. So I want to ask you, there's this big step, we have strategy in the front end of the deal process and the end is integration where ultimately value gets created or destroyed. How much does integration play a role in strategy?
Yeah, I'll say, honestly, integration is 80% of it. Like, or I'll say, even if I need to put in really, integration is 90% of it, or even much more, if you have to say everything. Because finally, when you make an acquisition, like say, if I'm on the strategic side, I'm on the buy side, right? I'm buying. Like in this case, I'll say integration is everything, even if I have to say, because once a deal is done, people's incentive, that's where we need to understand how the incentives are aligned, right? Like say on the sell side, who are a banker who is selling it to you, for deal is done, for him, everything is done and he will take his check and he'll move away. On the buy side, you made a deal, that's great, you can celebrate, you can have a drink, and you can your part of your incentives are aligned to making a deal. But after winning, executing that is everything. Like unless a great deal can be made, but if its integration sucks, then it's everything is out the drain, and everything is a waste. So on the buy side, if you call, I'll say integration is everything. And a kind of deal made is only 20%. It's great to celebrate. It's good market news. And if you're a listed company, the right story of acquisition, the right target moves the share price, but the market has expectations on how you will deliver or what they will expect from you. And continuing that and delivering that continues that value and builds on that value. If integration you're not able to do, even a great deal can be the worst one because you can kill the value.
And does that specifically shape your actual strategy with your integration model? Or is that sort of thought
Yeah,
of afterwards when you
yeah,
identify a target?
yeah. That's a very good question because in fact, that kind of goes back into the capability point what we are talking about, right? See, when I'm going to say to take example, like on the same example to say I'm going after this acquisition and say this is a capability I have. Out of it, I'll say I need to, like, I'm looking for a target to do. Always I've said before, like I need to filter any acquisition need to be filtered based on my internal capability, right? Say there are some acquisitions you can do and say my team is awesome at it. Like I'm acquiring, they know the business inside out, and they can engage the new customers very well. They can tell the story. They can engage the new employees very well. They can part of a combined organization. You know the business well to grow and to first not to lose any business, then to grow and create value. But you can also make some choices to say, like, you're not going to make acquisitions only in areas what you're good at. Like, but you say now you want to stretch, I want to make a new segment expansion. But in that case, you need to be really cautious there. Like, it's a new segment. But if I'm sure that my team is not good at it, but they do not know how to sell to the segment, they do not understand the segment, then the question comes in about about who needs to manage whom, right? Like say, so that's where it's integration is so critical, and in things to say at the time of buying, you need to know how you're going to run this business. Like, what's the combined customers look like? Are they different? Or are they a kind of a different segment? Like, who needs to be the market facing people? Who's the ideal people to run the organization? Always, it's an old mindset to say I'm the buyer, I will run the business. But in new age business where technology is disrupting, that may not be the case, and you need to have a mindset where what's the incoming team, who is best organized to run it, who knows to engage the customers well and the business acquiring well, and who needs to be the front end team, who needs to be the operating team, who can create that value. And finally, integration is about why am I buying this? Like what synergies? What's the synergy multiplier? Like how do I define it? Right? How do I articulate it? Like who? What does it mean in terms of measurements? Who is having the responsibility? And that responsibilities need not be assigned only with people like from the buying entity I'm buying. Like it needs to be from the people like who is best positioned to do. Then you get the synergies right. Otherwise, I buy a business that I do not know and I don't have a plan, and I go and mess it up and I drive out the talent. Then the business walks out the day one, right? Like it's a value leakage across. So integration plan is so much upfront because, and that too in a new age areas, upfront people asking to say, what's your, like it's the time about who am I reporting into, like how are you going to run the business, like how are you going to create value for me, and so these are very critical questions upfront. So you're clear about integration plan at the time you're prospecting a target. You can tell the story well, and if you're not clear, that comes out very clean because it comes out fuzzy and it comes out not clear in terms of organization structure, or you're talking about how incentives are calculated and how what they can expect as a career plan, and if they are living their, if they are rolling up their shares in the company, they need to have a conviction like the resulting company shares is going to grow in value, right? Like so, you need to tell a very powerful story, and there the integration plan kind of clarity needs to be there.
Sounds like you got some considerations, some pretty early considerations in the strategy about integration. But then as you identify targets, it just keeps expanding and you iterate on it and really try to get more of those considerations throughout that whole process so that you're
Yeah.
really prepared and don't screw up the deal and scare people off.
Yeah, and then just considerations like the way to structure a deal, if that's what you mean to say. I'll say it's an art, right? Like, and particularly if I look in the last 3 years, money was cheap, it's available, and it's a lot of growth, so many deals, and if you want to look in the digital tech, always there are some best of, like if you're aware of the term of rule of 40, like any companies with a 20% growth rate and a 20% margin, and you are in the cloud tech space and digital enabled, like you are hot. Like there are 20 people chasing you. The moment you are 20 million in revenue, you have 20% in margin, like you'll be getting calls like crazy, right? Like that was the world. Like if that kind of an area, if you need to go in and just differentiate, it's about like not to say this is the money I'm giving you, I'm acquiring you. It's about a lot to say on the structure, to say this is how you're growing on your own, be a part of me. Now I can put that catalyst in you and I can hyper accelerate, and this is what you can get in advance, and you can articulate, like that's where you can differentiate against a strategic, sometimes who are not who don't have the ability to give shares, and somebody who have the ability to give shares and somebody gives cash. Like you can understand and differentiate to say, if you have a powerful story, what you can get in cash, receives a part of your consideration in my shares, but this is my strategy forward. I'm going to grow like this, I'm going to do this multiple acquisition, these are segments I'm going to do. Instead of you driving it on your own, be a part of me, we will drive together, and this is the path forward, and this is what my added blocks forward, and this is the growth curve about, and how this share is going to be, and what's the value you can make out of it down the line. And you say that, yeah, now it's better than what you can make on your own, and better than make out of others. You can assess as who you are competing with. That's how you can differentiate. And more importantly, to say we are the nice people to work with. Why we are the nice people to work with? Why everything looks good on paper, and if there's a one day of life is a tough life, that can drive away people also.
Yeah. So the integration thinking gets you bringing about the joint go to market. Like, what's that going to look like? And then you're building that as part of your story when wooing this potential target.
Yeah.
So, what do you do when you have a business leader who wants to do a deal outside your M&A strategy?
Yeah, actually, need to like say my question will be is this really outside the strategy, right? Like say if this is outside M&A strategy, but it's the core part of the strategy, then the question is if my M&A strategy is right? Like but if this is outside the overall strategy, like then you need to question like sometimes, yeah, the question is, can that happen? Yeah, it happens in industry. That can be always pet projects of CEOs, pet projects of board, or that can be because there is big money involved. There can be some shady stuff like a transaction can be a part of moving money from one to the other. So you need to question the integrity part first, right? Like what's the motive behind it, and transactions can be an easy way of hawala there and moving money from one to the other, or it's like a kind of bad leadership, right? Like say if you're putting like then you have to if you're it's a kind of bad area, like if this is like what I call a strategy is something you go across the organization and ask people like what's the strategy, and people should say in two lines, this is what as a company we are working. Like if a leader is making a choice to do something out of it, then the question is to say, do you want to be a part of it? Like also what's the new strategy? And if it's not compelling, like it's a kind of distracted efforts and distracted value, it's kind of value killing. And you need to question the incentives behind why somebody is doing something, right? Like it can be a shareholder value leakage also.
That makes sense. Give it its own independent assessment. Because if I wake up and decide, hey, I want to buy this oceanfront hotel,
Yeah.
then it goes back to the thing like, is it really aligned with the strategy? And then,
Yeah, there are very many stories. Like say, it has happened. Like if I'm a one common founder, I run a uh, one business here, two business here, and suddenly that doesn't have anything in common. And today I want to say I want to combine both and put up a long fetch shot of why this makes a sense. Then you need to wonder like what's the incentive behind for the shareholders, like whether one is bankrupt and one is making money, one you want to save the other one, and who is benefiting. And so there is questions behind on what are the motives and governance structures beyond, and is this can be an I'll boil down to an integrity and incentive issue, or is it convincing? It's a recalibration of strategies can change in industry. Like there are reptile industries like cement and iron and others, and but there are butterfly industries now, crypto and tech and changes. The strategies need to be redefined every year, and in that case, this is a new definition of strategy. Then everybody needs to realign, right? So
so how often should you reassess your strategy?
and as an industry standard, people in a book you see, yeah, yearly once you do a annual strategy planning life cycle, and you look into and see whether there's a kind of change in, like ideally you define a strategy for the next 5 years, and every year you relook to see the same inside out and outside in process and recalibration and the choices. You say, is there any change? If there is any change, you articulate that again and articulate the initiatives to do. But you need to change in terms of, like I said, like this needs to be nimble on new age industries. You need to put the planning cycle. It can be longer for certain industries, it can be shorter for certain ones, because then some industries like the commodities, like it's not going to change unless the geopolitical issue changes. It doesn't change in many years, but in new age tech, it changes. It may call for a look in every 6 months instead of a year. So it's industry specific, I'll say.
Fair enough. We talked about relationships before. Does relationship play a part in formulating your strategy?
I'll say very much, like say being nearly 25 years in the M&A space, like say I'll say kind of relationship as the core. I'll say like one thing, if you want to be a corp dev person and you have to invest your efforts, is to proactively invest in the relationships. And finally, the as much as the world looks small, well, the world looks much larger. It's very small because the deal circle is known and very well known, and the way what kind of deal maker you are is very well known, and good people to work with, bad people. I'll say relationship can save deals. Like say, and in a broader strategy framework, relationship matters a lot because you get the truth from your customers, the stakeholders, to get a honest voice of feedback. And in any strategy process, from an outside in, the your strength of relate people, even the customers who are not happy with you, you have a great relationship, they can decide to stay with you and give a voice back in the process for you to make corrections and giving you an option to make the course corrections to define. And that's valuable from an organization strategy. And from an M&A strategy aspects of it, I'll say relationship is very good. Like even if you start a deal, I'll invest my time entirely in knowing the person, other person, and to see how it can be a win-win and how I can make a stronger relationship, because relationship can save deals. And however hard you define it, a transaction is 6 months, or sometimes it can be a 2 month process, it can be a 1 year process. And in a longer process, there are going to be curves in between where you need to have really hard conversations, and really these will be one of the some of the sensitive, and so much relationships are on. You can pick up the phone and you can discuss and solve it. Things can be solved, and if people believe in you, there are things always it can be resolved. So relationship, you can call it a savior, and it is worthwhile a savior, because when you're spending in a bigger, if you're making 100 million deal, you're going to spend 3-4 million in your entire exercise, right? Like and if relationships can save that into converting into a deal or not, it's worthwhile to have be good, not to cut corners, and think from other person's perspective. And always people are willing to give your ask of number one, but so far you are respectful of their ask of number one, right?
So let's tie relationship to reputation. Because I think you told me about a situation where you joined and it was part of shifting that reputation around.
Yeah, I see. It's the very soon industry will call you out, right? Like a kind of reputation is it is a lot. Like say if you're be in the buy side, if you're only, like example, if you're only seeing deals, if you're not making deals, and it's only a question of years, you'll be called out to say it's not worth spending time with you. And if you're a buyer like who are cutting corners, and the buyers don't get to make money, like you'll be called out. And the moment you are playing long in a segment and for years, like I played in the segment 25 years, like say you have multiple acquisitions behind you, right? Like what makes precedence in the industry is that how well you handle those companies there, how the buyers, how the sellers in the prior, how they have done well, and each of those acquisitions, what they say about you, and how well they have made them very fair to you. Like you make on-out deals and you make considerations of different kind. What they talk about you, have they made their money? They enjoyed the time in the combined company? So that makes a lot. And many times you can convert an opportunity where you come across into a new segment and people try to understand who you are, and it makes sense in a new geo, and people have not known your brand, and you say you're the acquirer and they do not know you. And then always this helps to say, oh, this is the list of acquisitions I have made. You feel free to talk to XYZ. We made these acquisitions and they are with us. That can change the entire game, and how can you on the top spot among the other competitive offers they are doing. That makes a big difference.
Have you done that where you're in a competitive process and you said, hey, look, we have references, talk to these other executives of companies we've acquired?
Yes, we have. I've done it. Like it has worked really once where we were looking into a target in Canada, and then it's not a listed, it's not a company marked for sale, and we wanted like just proactively kind of prospected, and they had said, yeah, we are not up for sale, but we said, yeah, let's keep in touch, and over a period of time you do the kind of dating exercise to let's know each other, let's keep in touch and everything. And then for a period, yeah, you encouraged to say, these are the acquisitions you have done, and come, let's meet. And we had the opportunity to introduce one of the other acquisitions we have done in UK, and to say, like, you should some point of time, you should talk to this person. So hearing from that helped, because to say, yes, it's a good exercise. These buyers are not after to mess up with you, right? Like, and it's like you can believe on. That brings into say, oh yeah, that tempts sellers to say there's a kind of certain opportunity, and that shifted, and we eventually made a transaction too. So it helps. And whether you like it or not, I'm sure like any prudent seller, they are going to take a reference of you. And the bankers do a very good job. And nowadays, as a diligence, this is a standard diligence exercise, like where be as a buyer, I take when I'm doing a kind of an acquisition, the key players who are the key owners, you do integrity check, you do a kind of diligence check, and people are going to run 20 pages on you. And similar way, any seller is going to run, and because he's putting his entire career worth. If you're a promoter, you've spent your lifetime building a company and it's worth 50 million, and one day you want to say, finally, I'm good to do. He's going to take that time off to do a reference check on you. And then so far you can proactively offer that, like that helps you for sure.
Keep good references. I got questions. I have one question in chat. It says, hey, Sri, are you able to share a checklist or playbook that can be used as the basis for specific deal strategies?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Can definitely share, and playbook always helps. This is a standard term to use, like that helps you to set expectations with your internal shareholders, be it your board or be it your leadership team, or the external exercise on how do you play and what do you need as resource to play, what they can expect from a transaction, and how fast you can do it, and how well it is going to be done in different streams of it. There's a kind of a good tool to set expectations, to plan your resources, and also to get your partnership ecosystem in terms of the planning and diligence streams, and be it financial, legal, strategy aspects, like the diligence partners ready and that are relevant to a segment, your areas of diligence ready, and importantly, how do you prioritize that segment ready? So it helps a lot. Yeah.
Do you have a template for that?
Yeah, there are many templates out there, and we do have one, and happy to share.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, that's what he's asking, is if you're able to share it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have it handy, but definitely offline if you have an opportunity to connect.
But let me know. That's a whole other initiative that we have, is we do a lot of open sourcing. We have a whole agile M&A framework, and it's basically a collection of plays or artifacts on building out practices step by step. So that could be an opportunity, is actually build a little play and add a template to it.
Yeah. Just when we Google and it's about, like I'll say, even when we Google up about templates and queries, like you always get a 9-yard list, and always what's in it to customize what suits you. And I'll say, and the focus on entire playbook also has to be depending on how robust something you want to do and lighter you want to do. Like so much you can prioritize on the materiality. You can do a very thin diligence, but you can do a very effective diligence, and kind of not necessarily when there are 50 people out in the field to doing diligence is going to be effective, right? Like even you can do a very lighter diligence, and you can do an effective diligence, right? Like and the way you do a kind of diligence for a startup is different from a bigger company. So so the art is customization on what your needs, and the lists and templates are out available as plenty.
Yeah, I think you got a fair point there. It's got to be a guide, less of a to-do list.
Yeah.
Tree, what's the craziest thing you've seen in M&A?
Yeah, so where money is involved, you get to see so many crazy things. Like a crazy thing, my worst is where we missed a big $100 million deal, like where everything we spent nearly 6 months. Everything is done. It's a long weekend, and Monday was the holiday, and then the wire transfers need to be done. But over the weekend, the transaction was traded into a kind of a different buyer, right? Say it's a hard reality, because that's where you have a clause in any deal, no shop. And then it was like the belief, which expired just on Thursday, and we believe we have the execution copies ready, and do we need to do it? Like say, so far that's a big learning, because never take the legal process for light, because if you are doing a transaction and need to have the basic things like no shop clause extended till the time it's done, right? Like say, but that costs you a year of work and many millions spent, and do you want to really fight the legal case or not, right? And
You were literally 2 days out of exclusivity and you lost the deal.
yeah, and somebody traded, and yeah, we just don't you can fight a legal battle, but it's hard to prove, like unless the onus is on you of not doing what you have to do for sure. It's,
Wow.
yeah,
I never heard that one, but
yeah.
that
And there are crazy things like you bought a company in Chicago, like say go there and you're kind of logged out because the existing CEO don't wants to prove he is in control. Like you get to see the power games, and you get to see different styles. You get to see mismanaged incentives. Like when incentives drive everybody, right? Like say if you have a bad incentive equation, you are going to see bad behavior. Right? And there are so many experiences of related to that, right? So you have to spend a long time, and when you're doing an integration plan, like how do you motivate people, and how do you have skin in the game? How do you have incentives aligned, and how do you ensure that, and how it is legally valid, and you define it wrong, like you ask for it. So
can only try your best to minimize post-close surprises. Sri, thank you so much for the time today. I enjoyed the conversation and learned a lot about M&A strategy.
yeah, so much. As I enjoyed the conversation, also it was like we can talk the subject, like you said, as long so long, and you feel so much to talk about. It's awesome to connect here.
Thank you, and here's to the deal.
Thanks, everyone.
Uh,
Thank you.